What's up, photo friends? Hope everybody's doing great. I want to get into today my smallest 35mm camera, which is my Rollei 35 LED. What we have here is a very, very tiny camera that is amazing in a lot of ways. The engineering that goes into this camera is probably top on the list of things that I'm most impressed with, and right running up next to that is its form factor. It's just such a small piece of equipment. I mean, just right in the palm of your hand, very small. And point and shoot-esque, but with just lots and lots of manual features and a much more analog 35mm non-point and shoot kind of experience. So let's talk about it real quick. As far as like the layout is concerned, let's get into the top deck. We have a film advance lever. We have a shutter actuation button. Oh, for the shutter to actuate, we have to have the lens out, and I'm gonna get into that in a minute. Shutter actuation button. We have a battery bay because on my Rollei 35 LED I can put a battery in here and I can run a light meter. I don't do that personally. I just shoot Sunny 16 with this camera just to keep it basic, and I love shooting that way with this camera in particular. So let's keep it moving along. We have a large window on the top which gives us our where we are with our actuation count, and it's domed, so I feel like it's giving us kind of like a larger view of what's underneath there, so it's just really easy to see. We have a switch to activate our light meter if we were choosing to use that, and we have a DIN and an ASA setting. Again, I'm not using that to affect any light meter, I'm just using it to remind myself what my box speed is of my 35mm film that is in my camera. So really basic top deck design. Let's get into the bottom of the camera itself. So on the bottom here we have a hot shoe, we have our film release button for rewinding our film, we have the rewind mechanism on the lower portion of the camera here as well, and then we have the lock in order to lock the camera together, because getting film into the camera is different than a swinging door situation. So when we unlock the lower lock on that, the camera itself slides apart, and what we're doing is we're loading our film into the body of the camera where the lens is attached, and the rear of the camera is merely a shell that has some structural components on the inside that match up with the stuff on the exterior, right? So when we load our film, we have our take-up spool on the back. We have a little metal door which swings closed and open to keep the film flush with the film plane, because what we've got here is a little copal shutter inside this lens assembly, right? And when we advance the film and we shoot our photo, there's just a very small copal shutter within the confines of that assembly, which is then feeding our film the images that the lens is seeing and all of that light, etc. So that hinge door, and then this is our film bay. So we draw it across, attach it to the take-up spool, close that down, begin to advance our film, take a couple of actuations. Then we take this shell and we very patiently apply it to the camera and seat it into the top deck, and then we lock it on the bottom. So that's the bottom of the camera and the unlock component and some film loading stuff. So getting that to kind of slide together did take me some time, but the more I do it, the better I get at it. In the beginning, you may feel like it's a little bit of a weird shimmy to get it to close in there, but you got that if you have this camera or you get this camera. Let's talk a little bit about the lens assembly then. So what we've got here is a lens assembly that has the ability to recess into the camera by toggling it, and then you push it and seat it into the camera body itself. It doesn't really lock into place there necessarily, but it's in there pretty well, and that really decreases the profile of the camera and makes it, again, a very pocketable, just tiny little guy. He's so cute. I love him so much. So when we pull the lens out, we pull it out and there's this satisfying zip sound, and then we lock it into place, and then we have the ability to take our actuations, advance the film again, take our actuations, right? On the rear of the camera, very basic, just the view window itself, which really is just for composition. Okay, so when we talk about framing with our camera, we talk about using that little viewfinder, but it's just for composing relative to that 40mm frame that we've got paired with the camera itself. It's a really bright viewfinder, and there are some really lovely looking little lines in there. I think that there's something up top for parallax in addition to the full frame. They're very easy to see even with my glasses. The lens assembly itself, shutter speed is a dial, I guess you could say, which is flush with the camera body and has some teeth on the front and some indicators on the collar itself, which help you to know whether you're shooting 500th of a second, 250th, 125, 60, 30, and then we have a bulb setting on the lens as well. Further out from that is our aperture ring, f/22 down to f/3.5 on this particular lens. It just moves and there's no ticking. The shutter speed dial does have some tactical ticking as you move through it, and there's a lot of tension in that. The f-stop ring on mine is pretty loosey-goosey. I don't think it's really going anywhere, and it usually doesn't, but there's no real tension to it. And then further out from that, you put your fingers on the very edge of the lens assembly itself where there's some teeth, and you have the ability to focus the lens itself. So, but the lens is not coupled again to that viewfinder. So you're not like rangefinder focusing, you're zone focusing. So what zone focusing is judging the distance to your subject from where you are. You set your lens at X amount of feet or to infinity, and then you take your actuation with the idea that you're that far away from your thing. So I tend to shoot with this lens focus to infinity or high f-stop numbers, so I'm sure to get focus. I have been able to achieve closer focus at minimum focus distances and hit focus, but I usually want to set my f-stop to, you know, stop down, so I'm hedging my bets on that. But it is an interesting way to go about focusing. So zone focusing is what we're talking about. And just heads up, the lens assembly was going to have two sets of numbers. One of them is meters. It's white. It's closer to the camera body. It's what caught my eye, and I shot roll, maybe 2 rolls, not metering, but zone focusing with that meter setting, which I don't know how to convert quickly in my mind. I didn't realize that feet was further out and in red, which was much harder for my eye to see. And so once I realized that and was zone focusing for that foot's distance, which is out on the front and a little more difficult to see, but I figured that out, I was hitting focus much better and more consistently. So that's really good. So the lens itself is a Triotar 3.5 40 millimeter made by Rollei. This particular camera is built in Singapore, made in Singapore by Rollei. It says that on the back of the camera. I'm not sure what that signifies, but you know, what I love about this camera is all of those things that I talked about and just kind of gave you a quick rundown on. The engineering of the camera, like I said, the manufacturing itself is high quality. The camera itself does not feel like a toy or a junky camera at all. It has a really nice heft to it and feel of quality that I really appreciate. And just the overall experience is, again, unlike anything I've got right now in my 35 millimeter lineup. So it's very unique and I love it for all of those reasons. And again, holy smokes, its form factor alone is just so cush. It's just this tiny little thing that takes really amazing photos too. And the lens quality is actually pretty great, whether you're shooting black and white or you're shooting color. I don't think I've put E6 through this yet, but I'm sure it would do great. I love what the lens does. So overall, just a win. And me personally, I scored this for $2 at a local junk shop in a situation that I'm not going to get into right now, but man, it was just really a great experience. And so the camera itself has this great little story behind it, and then I love it so much, and it works so great, and it's such a pristine example. Win, 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 love, love, love. So anyway, there's a quick teardown of my Rollei 35 LED. Hope everybody is doing great. I'll catch up with everybody next time. Peace out.